Hey guys, welcome to Rebel Media, and today I've driven out here to the Civil War Naval Museum. I've been wanting to come here for a while. Let's go inside, see what we can learn in here. Holy smokes. Wow. Look how big this is. It was. Down here is a short section of chain covered from the wreck. Look at that propeller. These are all items that were recovered from the Chattahoochee. They said that the axe was used for a tool, even though it was called a battle axe. And they would use the grappling hook to grab anything that might have come off board. But then what I thought was the coolest is this is one of the crew members' pocket knives. That's pretty interesting.
Florida's greatest naval disaster of the Civil War took place on May 27, 1863, when a deadly explosion wrecked the warship CSS Chattahoochee. The incident took place in the Apalachicola River at Blountstown. The powerful warship had been built at Amicushift Navy Yard in Early County, Georgia, and was commissioned by the Confederate Navy on January 1, 1863. Many of her officers and crew had served aboard the ironclad CSS. Virginia, formerly the Merrimack, during her historic class with the USS Monitor at Hampton Roads, Virginia. Their presence aboard the Chattahoochee was indicative of Richmond's high hopes for the warship on that stormy night. As the crew prepared to raise steam for the trip upriver, an argument broke out over how much water was in the boiler. A gauge was not working, and before the ship's chief engineer could intervene, a massive steam explosion rocked the vessel. The malfunctioning gauge had caused the crew to allow the boiler to grow red hot before filling it with water. When the water poured in, it instantly vaporized and burst. 16 members of the crew were killed, instantly, scalded to death by the steam. Another was mortally injured, 2 more were severely injured, and another 4 received minor injuries. Panicked that the gunpowder in the ship's magazines might explode, the crew opened plugs in the ship's hull and let her sink to the bottom of the muddy river.
New Orleans submarine? I don't know about any of these. I didn't know about any of these submarines. I knew about this one, of course. Wow, this is awesome. New ways to blow up things. I like their style. Ooh, they've got a replica of the Hunley spar torpedo, but these are all torpedoes and different kinds of artillery. So look at that. Big picture of the crew on the USS Hunchback. Look how young some of these guys are, especially right here. They're like kids. Painting of Havana, Cuba. Looks like there might be trouble brewing. We've got Confederate ships here and one Yankee ship. This is the uniform of Catesby Jones, who was the commander of the Virginia and the Chattahoochee. This remnant of flag was on the USS Galena.
The USS Galena, a 950-ton ironclad gunboat, was built at Mystic, Connecticut. The Galena was one of 3 ironclad concepts selected by the U.S. Navy Ironclad Board to counter Confederate ironclad construction projects. Galena was a broadside ironclad with interlocking plates of iron. The ironclad was not shot-proof. Galena was captained by Commander John Rogers and was repulsed during the May 15, 1862 Battle of Drury's Bluff. Eventually, Galena's armor was removed and fought during the Battle of Mobile Bay as a wooden sloop of war. This flag flew above Fort Walker, which was hastily built in 1861 to protect the South Carolina coast against Union attack. Fort Walker bore the brunt of the Union attack on November 7, 1861, when after 4 hours, with only 3 guns left serviceable and ammunition almost gone, the troops under General Thomas F. Drayton were forced to withdraw from the island. The Battle of Forts Jackson and St. Philip in April of 1862 was the decisive battle for possession of New Orleans. The 2 Confederate forts on the Mississippi River south of the city were attacked by a Union Navy fleet. With the surrender of the forts, nothing could stop the Union forces. The fall of New Orleans was inevitable and anticlimactic. Cut off and surrounded, the garrisons of the 2 forts had no choice but to surrender.
These 2 flags we're looking at here, the top one with the anchor, belonged to the USS Blackhawk, and this one with the field of stars belonged to the USS Saco. Here's a really cool flag, guys. This flag flew above Fort Henry, which was captured along with Fort Donelson, and where Grant earned his famous nickname, Unconditional Surrender Grant.
Sir, yours of this date proposing armistice and appointment of commissioners to settle terms of capitulation is just received. No terms except unconditional and immediate surrender can be accepted. I propose to move immediately upon your works.
This big, beautiful flag right here used to fly above the CSS Atlanta.
The CSS Atlanta, a 1,006-ton ironclad ram, was originally built in Scotland in 1861. In November 1861, she ran the blockade into Savannah, Georgia, with a large cargo of weapons and military supplies. After Union forces closed the exits from Savannah, preventing her further use as a blockade runner, she was converted to an casemate ironclad and named Atlanta. She made her first appearance as a Confederate warship in mid-1862. In June of 1863, she encountered the U.S. Navy monitors Nahant and Weehawken. In a brief battle, Atlanta went aground and was overwhelmed by Weehawken's superior firepower, forcing her to surrender. The captured ironclad was taken into the Union Navy as now the USS Atlanta.
Okay, we have Admiral Franklin Buchanan. It looks like he just ran a blue flag. Not very creative. And this is from the CSS Tennessee to our right.
CSS Tennessee was a casemate ironclad ram built by the Confederacy. She was built to assist in the defense of Mobile, Alabama, and ultimately to challenge the Union blockade of that port. Her steam engine was taken from a steamship docked on the Yazoo River, the USS Alonzo Child. Prior to the war, the USS Alonzo Child had served on the Mississippi River with Samuel Clemens aboard, aka Mark Twain, serving as her pilot. The CSS Tennessee was the largest ironclad built by the Confederacy. With a length of 209 feet and a beam of 48 feet and a draft of 14 feet, she was an impressive ship. During the Battle of Mobile Bay, Tennessee was rammed by several ships, and her vulnerable steering chains, which, oddly, lay in exposed trenches on the afterdeck, were carried away by the heavy gunfire. Unable to maneuver, Tennessee was battered repeatedly by heavy solid shot from her adversaries. With 2 of her men killed, Admiral Buchanan, and 8 others wounded, and increasingly severe damage being inflicted on her, Tennessee was forced to surrender.
Some stylish uniforms. Before we board the Hartford, suppose we should go over here. And here's what's left of the CSS Georgia, protected Savannah's harbor. Here they are pulling the pieces out. There's the shaft, part of the anchor. Looks like we got some shackles up there and old bottles. There's a cannon they recovered. This is really cool. Here we have arguably the 2 most famous ironclads, the Monitor and the Virginia.
Over there.
Yeah.
CSS Arkansas flag. Now we're off to Plymouth, North Carolina.
God is infinite wisdom. I, 14 men, crouched in a barge boat, taken I saw the ancient
Got some cotton up there. We're about to board the Confederate ironclad here. This is great, guys. This is totally worth the drive. Alright, now we're inside the ironclad. It's like, here's where you would steer from. Can you imagine how loud it was in here? Look at the size of that cannon. You'd use the ropes and chains, I guess, here to move it and pivot it out the different holes. And then over here, you got your shells. More shells. A little dark in here, but totally cool. Here's some Yanks hanging out on the monitor. Fun fact about getting on boats, guys. You always want to step on with your right foot. And that's where the expression, get off on the right foot, comes from. Here we got some potatoes, some things to cook. Looks like these Yanks got a bunch of food. Those guys are hard at work. Got their guns ready. Oh dang. These are nice accommodations. I wouldn't mind being on this ship right here. Yeah.